What's up everyone, this is A from A Tech Reviews, and today we'll be taking a look together at the new all-in-one unit, DAC/amp from FX Audio. It's the new DR07. It's a DAC amp all-in-one unit. I'm pretty excited about it. I don't know about you, but I have been using it. We will review it together right now. I have a lot I want to share. We have a lot to cover, so let's dive right in. Let's start. So all-in-one devices have a lot of benefits. Like number one is like very functional and practical to use, and number two, it's very convenient and it takes less desk on your space. You can move it and become more portable for you, and you kind of use one wall wart, one power supply. You don't need to use two. So this actually becomes very attractive, especially when you think about the price of this unit, which is $170. Now this is becoming like something we have to pay attention to, because at that price this is actually kind of awesome. So this review is going to be like this. I will talk about the features of this device, as it's packed with features. I will talk about the specs, and I will then be showing you how the menu works, explain a bit about the usability factor for me, how I use it, and some remarks I have about it. Then I will be comparing it to other options, like for example stacks that I have. By stacks I mean separate DACs and amps, like L30, D30, a shit stack, and I have the JDS stack, also the Atom. I have the one, not the two. And then I will be comparing it to another highly regarded DAC amp, which is the TOPPING DX3 Pro Plus, which you can see here. So we have a lot to cover. Let's get started. First of all, when you buy this, like, one of the things you will get is, of course, this USB Type A to Type B cable. Actually, FX Audio mentions in the manual that this cable has like good shielding, and you can see actually this ferrite bead here to absorb many of the RF radiations and interferences and so on, which leads me to believe that they're correct. And number two, which is actually one of my favorite things about this DAC amp, is you get this, let me take that out, is you get this actually 12 volt 2A amp DC wall wart, which is actually pretty convenient and pretty awesome. Why is that? Because first of all, it's not AC, so it's not going to be bulky, right? And number two is that this is 12 volt, which is like a pretty standard voltage, which means if you lose this, or if you want a longer cable, you can pretty much go to Amazon and get any replacement. It will work as long as it's 12V 2A DC. Make sure it's DC, not AC. Alright, so this is something awesome. Other brands use maybe higher voltages. I've seen that. Some even use like 9 volts, lower voltages. The thing is with that is, if you want to replace it, which I usually do because I need a longer cable when I use it next to my TV, for example, and I usually have to buy one from the brand itself, which actually doesn't offer that option, and I feel stuck. You can find, of course, like 15 volts on Amazon and stuff like that, but it will not usually be a quality one, or it will be expensive, or it will not have the cable length you like, and so on. Moving on, you get this nice Bluetooth antenna, which we're going to use, and you get this plastic remote control. The remote control is made out of plastic. It's not something, I will focus about that much at this price point, except I will say it works really well. It works from all directions. It works with a good distance. So that makes me respect this remote. I will explain the buttons and how it works in a second. Now let's move on to the design itself. The design itself, you can see the size of it here. It's not that small and it's not that big. It's kind of like average size. The body itself is like sleek and minimalistic. And as you can see here, it's actually pretty nice. I will go through the inputs and outputs. On the front here, you can see on the left side, you get the power and selection button. You press 2 seconds, the device turns on. You then can check one press for choosing any item on your menu, which I'll explain again in a second. If you press 2 seconds more, the device turns off. You get the small display here, which is the weak point for this device. I will mention again. This is the only thing I don't like about it. That's it. And number two, you get MQA indicator light. I'm not a fan of MQA, but if you do, I respect that, no problem. Just I want you to know that this is a full decoder for MQA, and it has this indicator light depending on like the track you use and so on. You get two headphone outputs. You get the 3.5mm and you get the more durable 6.35mm. Now both of them are single-ended, and you cannot use both at the same time. You have to use one or the other. It's really dangerous if you use both. This is not only for this amp, this is for any amplifier. So I think this is actually kind of beneficial because 6.35mm is more stronger and from a durability and longevity kind of point. And this actually makes me feel more confident about it, because if for example you damage your 3.5mm by any way, you still have another output you could use that's actually stronger, right? Now you'll get your infrared antenna here. This is for the remote control. I actually don't need to point it at it or anything like that. You can use it from any direction. You don't have to worry about that. Now the volume knob is one of my favorite features here. As you can see here, the size is quite decent, right? For an amp this size and a DAC amp this size, I think that it's quite decent, as I can grab it with my 3 fingers. It has good depth, it has good size, I can grab it. It's a rotary encoder, which means it goes on forever. It doesn't stop like a normal volume pot or potentiometer. So you just keep doing that, and you can see it's actually silent. There is a small voice, that a small sound, but you cannot even hear that no matter how hard you try, unless you put your ears next to it. That's it here. On the back is the real surprise actually here. Let's go. The back is divided in two ways. You get on the left side is your inputs, and on the right side is your outputs. So on the left side, starting from the far left side, you get your Bluetooth antenna, gold plated. You get your USB Type B input, gold plated. You get your optical input, and you get your coaxial input. So you get your Toslink and your coaxial. Now moving on to the outputs, a big surprise is you get the optical output, something that we do not see often, and it's such a great and useful feature. Why is that? Because I am a person who loves optical. It saves me from a lot of situations here. And what I mean is, this is a single-ended DAC amp, and if you want to use it and you have a ground loop noise, for example from your PC or from your speakers or your monitors, and you don't know how to get rid of the ground loop, it actually takes a lot of time and effort to do that. So optical is actually galvanically isolated, which means it's immune to ground loop noise. So this is a cheap, 100% effective method to get rid of ground loop noise, which makes me appreciate it. Now it having an output is actually pretty nice, as you could use it with your TV, as I used it, and I could use it with my soundbar, or actually connect it to another DAC if I want. So that's a useful feature there. You get, other than that, you get your right and left analog RCA outputs, and on the far right here you get your power input, which is the DC 12 volt we have talked about. Now that's it. Let me connect it and be right back. Okay, I'm connecting it, and let's get started. Let's fire this up. So you press here for 2 seconds, you get the welcome screen, as you can see. And now I will be talking immediately about the only thing I didn't like about this DAC amp is the size of the screen. As you can see here, the size of the screen is small. It is not big. Like especially when I connected it to the TV and I was standing back or sitting back, a lot of the stuff here you can't see. The only thing you can see if it's on your desk and you just look hard is the volume. Now the volume goes from 0 to 99. When you raise it, like increasingly, it increases the volume. Like it's not like the other DAC amps where 0 is the highest volume. Some people will like that, some people will not prefer it. It's actually up to you. Anyway, you should know also that this volume control is digital attenuation, which means it works because of the DAC volume control inside. So keep that in mind. Now it's very nice and smooth. It goes up in 1 decibel increments until you reach the 99 and it stops there. So there is for that. Now you press a single press takes you to the mute, and another press will take you out of mute. One thing I want to say here is something that is really awesome to prevent any pops or clicks when you use it, especially with speakers and headphones and IMs also, which are very sensitive, is that there is a muting relay, which means every time you change sample rates sometimes, or if you use like a mute, like what I'm going to show you right now, there is a click that you can hear like so. Which is actually kind of awesome. Like, yes, it makes a small noise that you can hear, but it's actually silent, completely silent, 100% silent on your speaker, on your sensitive IM, on your headphone, which actually saves your hearing and saves your instruments. Another thing is when you get this, if you want to use like DSD and if you want to use like FooBar or stuff like that, if you use Windows, I recommend you go download the driver from the FX Audio website, which is this website right here, and give it a try. It's actually much better. The Windows recognizes it for like multi-sample rates and stuff like that. And you can use DSD with FooBar. They have a plugin which you can install. Very easy to do. For Mac, for Android, and stuff like that, you don't need to do anything. All of that, even Linux, it works on that without any problems. Now for the menu here, I will show you how to use it without a remote, and then I will show you how to do it. Like as I said, one click is the mute, on and off, and then if you press and hold for 2 seconds, you get your choice of gain. You just use the volume knob here, high and low gain. I really never needed to go to high with it. And then if you press another 2 seconds, after that you go to the filters. It has 6 filters from 1 to 6 and then back to 1 again. Sharp delay, roll off, and so on. And then you press again, and then you get the output, which has an auto feature and an all feature. The all feature means that music will be playing from the outputs on the front, the headphones output, and the RCA on the back, and the output optical on the back. But if you make it to auto, what happens is if there is anything connected on the headphone jacks on the front, the preamp or the output will be automatically disconnected. So this is like the auto feature. I keep it on the auto feature. If you want to change to the preamp, you just disconnect the headphone on the front. One thing I want to mention is that the RCA on the back, which are these two, they're not your regular 2 volts, they are 2.5 Vrms, which means they are 25% more hot or more powerful. So if your amp or power amp needs that power, that's great news. If it doesn't, very easy, just reduce the volume just a few dBs and you should be good to go. Now, you have here the remote, and it's actually pretty easy to use. It has the power on and off, and it has the mute, and it has the volume up and down. Left and right is for choosing your inputs and for using, like for example, USB. Again, the screen is small, but you can see the volume left and right, and you have your inputs here. This button changes from optical, coaxial, and excuse me, no inputs, Bluetooth and USB. EQ, amp, DAC, player, these buttons are completely not functional, they do not work. Now the remote is very responsive from a long distance. I'm going back here and you can see it's very, very responsive. I'm way back here and it's very responsive. I can point it up at the ceiling, I can point it down. It's always working. It's actually pretty awesome. Makes it very useful, but again, the only thing here will be the size of the small screen. Now, let me talk about the sound in a second here, because I have to describe it. The sound quality of this FX Audio here, I'll speak first about the Bluetooth. The Bluetooth is awesome. The wide range is very long range. Wide range, it's very long range. It has a wide range and it has a long range. What I mean is I put even a wall between me and the DAC amp and it's still connected. I use it with my phone with LDAC. It sounded wonderful. I used it with a speaker. It sounded wonderful. The USB sounds better, actually, to be honest, but again, it's a great functionality and it's great convenience that I use every single day. See? So with that said here, the sound description, which I want to touch on quickly, the sound of it is the normal or expected AKM sound that you get, which is actually kind of full sounding, it's kind of lush sounding, full bodied, the instrument sounds full. There is a focus on the mid-range. The bass is powerful, but there is a focus on the mid-range. Everything sounds smooth, detailed, but smooth. I would describe it as musical, very beautiful to listen to. It has details, but it's musical. It's never sharp, it's never glary, it's never, you guys know what I'm talking about, the DACs. Doesn't have any glare, doesn't have any sharpness, the sibilance is down to the minimum. It's pretty musical and beautiful, natural sounding. It leans on the warm side of things, I have to be honest with that. It leans on the warm side of things, which makes bass seem more powerful, and it makes the vocals, as I said, full-bodied, and it makes the vocals rich. It's a very beautiful sound signature, and I doubt anyone will not enjoy it. Actually, it is really beautiful, especially since it's detailed. Now we have spoken about that, and we have spoken about the output, the inputs on the back, and the outputs, the optical outputs. I have to speak about the power. I have to say, for IM use, I never needed to go over high gain. Like, I stayed in low gain most of the time. I never needed to change, and actually I never even went closer to the max volume on it, listening with all IMs. With that said, for using headphones, I think that maybe if you have how to drive higher impedance headphones, you might want to look to getting separate DAC and amp, like as a stack. The power output here on the 300 ohms is like 80 milliwatts approximately, and if you get to the 32 ohms, it is 1.1 watts, which is again sufficient for most of anything you need for IM use. The gain here, the lower gain is unity gain, the low gain is 1x unity gain, and the high gain is actually 5.6 dB. I don't know why, maybe that's the way it's designed, but it's 5.6 dB. Power output, of course, depends on the volt it's used, which is the 12 volt one here. Now, I have been really satisfied with this, and aside from the screen like size here, would I give this a recommendation? Absolutely. Now, comparing it with something like the JDS Labs Atom stack or the Modi and Magni, what are the differences when I compare this to that? Obviously, number one, you with the FX Audio or an all-in-one unit, you get to use only one wall wart, so one power supply. It's easier, cleaner on your desk. It's one unit. That is something you have to keep in mind. Another thing is this unit has Bluetooth, the others don't. I know Bluetooth is not that high fidelity, but honestly for me it is, because it sounds good and it's something I literally use every single day. When I relax sometimes, I just take out my phone and I listen to some tunes on my speakers using a Bluetooth connected to my DAC. LDAC is actually very good sounding. That for my use cases, if I'm not critically listening, I think it's wonderful. Now, the third thing, which is actually pretty important, is a separate stack will allow you to get much more power, much more juice, which means if you have higher impedance headphones and you need that extra power, if you need, anything over 1 watt at 32 ohms, or anything more than 18 milliwatts or 100 at 300 ohms, then a stack could give you a lot more, to give you 2 watts or 3 watts at a similar pricing or slightly higher than this. And for the 300 ohms, it could give you actually 200, 300 milliwatts, which is actually commendable, very nice, and then this is what you need. But of course, as I said, you lose the Bluetooth, you have 2 wall warts, 2 power supplies, and you have a stack on your desk, unlike this. Now, for the comparison segment of this video, where I actually have to compare it to another thing which is actually very highly regarded and very good, which is actually this Topping DX3 Pro Plus. I just want you to show it to you here, because I have to remove the power because the cable is short, as I said, something that you have to face. You can see the difference in the displays here, and I have to give this point to Topping immediately, just how easy it is and how easy it is to see. Like I'm sitting on the couch in front of the TV, and I can use the remote, and I can control the volume, I can control a lot of actions, and I can see it. Let me just remove this power because it's actually very short. Now, I will come back to the display thing. I just want you to know that the Topping uses a 15-volt DC wall wart. Again, the drawback here is, as I said, the provided cable is very short. It's not for my use. I need a longer one. I'm not like tied to my outlets. I need a longer one, and it's not that easy to find a good quality one with a longer cable. The benefit that this provides, the 15 volts provide, is that it gives much more power. As you can see here, the Topping gets much more power compared to the FX Audio DR07. The DR07 has 1.1 milliwatt at 32 ohms. The Topping has 1.8 watts at 32 ohms. The DR07 has 18 milliwatts at 300 ohms. The Topping has 240 milliwatts, if I remember correctly. That's a huge leap. That's a huge difference. So if you have hard to drive headphones, or if you need that extra power, the Topping is there. Another thing here is, other than the display, which I'll come back to, is of course the single output 3.5 millimeter on the Topping versus the dual outputs on the FX Audio. Speaking of the Bluetooth, this has 5.1, this has 5.0. I don't think it matters really. Both of them use the same Bluetooth 5125 Qualcomm chip, and both of them support LDAC. The FX Audio supports MQA, the Topping does not support MQA. Again, if this matters to you, then it matters. The volume knob, the Topping has a volume knob that it's actually a rotary knob, but it's nice, but it has that noise. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't like it. It's a preference kind of thing. I have to say, it is responsive. The volume from 99 to 10 goes in 1 decibel increments, and then when you get below that, it gets to 0.5 decibel increments. On the FX Audio, the rotary knob is pretty much silent, and it's in 1 dB increments until the end. The USB chips used here, which are actually a big difference. This uses the Exmos XU316, excuse me. This one uses the Exmos XU208, which is 2 generations behind, which means this has 16 cores. This has 1 gigabyte, I think, of internal memory, or 1 megabyte, I think, of internal memory. This has 128, and it has 8 cores. This makes differences in stability, compatibility, firmware upgrades, and response, and so on. Again, I don't think this makes a usable difference, except in one thing, which Exmos claims is the lower latency provided on the higher end Exmos USB chips. Now, in terms of inputs, this one has all the inputs like the FX Audio. It has the Bluetooth, it has the USB, it has the optical, coaxial, and it has the RCA outputs. Now, it has 2 coaxial inputs here, and if you're wondering why I cover it, because actually I don't use it as an output, or I don't use the coaxial here. I use this as an all-in-one unit. So I just connect the USB and the Bluetooth, which I use, and I use a 3.5 on the front. Here we have an extra optical output plus all the same inputs I said here. The remote control, I have to speak about that for a second, is much better on the FX Audio. I can point it anywhere. It's very responsive. On the Topping, again, it's a hit and miss, something I have with all my Topping apps and DACs, excuse me. The optical, I have to say, I connected to the DX3 Pro Plus, and it disconnects with my TV sometimes. Most of the time is okay, but it disconnects. Again, I had this with a lot of my Topping DACs.
pretty much every single one of them, from the E70 to E50 to E30 to D50, the first version. And when I contacted Topping, they said that it's usually always a problem in my TV. I have changed TVs, I have tried the upstairs TV, it's always my problem. Anyway, it's much better on the DX3 Pro Plus, although it still disconnects. Now, for the FX audio, it never disconnects at all. Something that has been, like, you know, I think it's kind of basic, right? To get like a cheap device that has functional optical at least. Now, the final question here is, which one should you buy and which one will you use? I will say my opinion quickly here. I will say it depends on a few factors here. First is the preference factor. I forgot actually to talk about the sound differences, excuse me, before I move on to the which one you want. The sound differences, it actually is pretty huge here. The FX audio is smoother sounding, it's fuller sounding, it's warmer sounding. There is better bass impact on the FX audio, and vocals feel or sound more natural, more rich. That's how I describe it. The treble is smoother but not as detailed. The topping is as neutral as it gets. It's clinical. Everything is focused and clear. It has better imaging, to be completely honest. Notes are better defined. It has the better detail, and it shines especially on the treble and the imaging. The treble on the topping is clear. I can hear more, especially like sounds like the drum cymbals or bell sounds or something like that. It is much more clear on the topping with incisiveness to the notes. On the FX audio, it's a warmer sound and it's more smooth. Like, I hear the same sound I hear here, but it is like less defined. That's how I would say it. Less clear to the forefront of things. Like, here I can hear them, they don't grab my attention, but here I hear them and it's like not sharp, but any veil is completely lifted and you can hear the last inch of detail. This could be due to the DAC chip, or it could be to the NFC amplifier chip. That is something to say. Another thing I want to say is that this is lighter in weight. This is not. This is a bit heavier, and this gets warmer in use. Like, if I put my hand here now, I can feel it's a bit warm. The topping never gets warm whatsoever. Now, which one you will use to answer that question? As I said, it's a preferential kind of thing. Which look do you prefer? Which size do you prefer? And which brand you kind of prefer? Obviously, the most basic kind of things. If you like the MQA and it's something important to you, you want to use it, then you kind of get the point here, the FX audio. If you like the optical output and you want to use it, then the FX audio. If you want a slightly better remote, then the FX audio. If you want a silent volume knob, the FX audio. If you want two outputs for your headphones, it's the FX audio. And on and on. You kind of get my drift here. If you want to, most importantly, pay less, you kind of get my point, the FX audio. Now, the few reasons I would see someone getting the topping, which is also an excellent device that I recommend, is, like, first of all, number one, no one can deny two things about it, which actually are pretty impressive, and it beats the FX audio, like, completely. Number one is the output power. The headphone amplifier on the topping, the NFC is extremely powerful, much more powerful than the FX audio. You get 1.8 watts, 32 ohms, and 214 milliwatts on the 300 ohms. This actually drives the Sennheiser HD650 that I have very well. Another thing here which could make you get this over the FX audio is, of course, cannot be denied, the beautiful display on the front. The beautiful display, the size here, like, makes it very easy to read, and you can see it from far away. If you use this with a TV and you're sitting on the couch, you can easily see the volume. If you use it on your desk at any time of the day, you can see the volume. If you use high gain and low gain, you can actually see the volume and see the gain indicator. If you use a sample rates, you can see them very, very clearly. This is very useful and very practical and convenient to use when you try it in practice. As I said, the volume knob is kind of like something like, it depends on your taste. Do you like this? Some people like it, some people don't like it. The FX Audio, the weak point is the display, but other than that, it's a good competitor for a lower price with a bit less power, but again, bit less price, an MPA support, an extra optical output, an extra headphone output, a smooth and silent volume knob, and at the same time it gets that warm sound signature, which is completely different than the topping. It gives you that lush sound, that full sound, the AKM sound, not as detailed as the topping, not as sharp or incisive as the topping. Which one do I recommend? I recommend both. Both are excellent devices. I really can't say that one is better than the other. You just have to try it for yourself and see your use case and the features you like and how much you're willing to pay for those features. Both are excellent, and I'm sure if you get either of them, you'll be completely happy and almost satisfied even. So this is it. This is the review for the DR07. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I have these here with me and I'll be using them, I'm sure. If you want me to compare it to another device, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a like, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of my content. If you want to ask anything, as I said, leave it in the comments. Until next time, stay tuned and see you next time.